Good evening. This is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my guest, David Kanyuk. And David has another engagement tonight that involves comedy, and so he will be leaving us at 6 o'clock.
I know. I hate to bail out on you.
Oh, that's fine.
halftime.
I will rough it gladly. For your companionship the first half hour.
My highly sought after companionship.
Yes, your highly sought after banter.
That's right. Sometimes it's witty too.
Yes. So if you would like to call the show with your comments or questions, you can reach us by calling toll-free 855-244-0077. And locally 244-0077. We left off last week, kind of as we was going to a break, and the music was starting to fade out. We started to talk about this new series on TV called Cosmos.
Cosmos.
With the narrator, Neil deGrasse. I would like to call him Degrasse, but like Degrasse High. But Neil deGrasse Tyson. And you had some thoughts that you wanted to pick up on that conversation, but I will kind of pick up where we left the conversation last week. Mm-hmm. And I was opining at the audacity and the piousness, arrogance, a few other adjectives that I can't readily come to mind at this moment. But he was pontificating the thought to Bill Moyers that he really questioned the ability for people who believed in a young earth, their right to vote. And I just was astounded by that statement of just sheer arrogance. And you had some thoughts that you was wanting to pick up on this topic of possibly connecting some dots and some things you wanted to have to say about this.
Well, yeah, I saw a news story earlier in the week that brought me back to that Neil deGrasse Tyson conversation that we had on Friday. And I don't know, it led me just down this whole train of thought. And I actually was going to write like I was telling you earlier, I was going to write a whole article on your blog and everything. And I did not have time this week with this play going up. But the story that I saw, this was on March 17th on InfoWars. This was professor calls for climate change deniers to be imprisoned. A professor with Rochester Institute of Technology has called for the incarceration of any American who actively disagrees that climate change is solely caused by human activity. Lawrence Torcello, a philosophy professor with a PhD from the University at Buffalo, published the comments as part of an essay submitted to the academic website The Conversation, which is really ironic considering he wants to limit conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, Torcello argues that malignant individuals, who he does not identify, are collectively organizing a campaign funding misinformation about climate change. Torcello goes on to suggest that such activity ought to be considered criminally negligent, adding that science misinformation surrounding climate change should be considered a crime. Torcello asks readers to consider cases in which science communication is intentionally undermined for political and financial gain. So anyway, the story goes on and references a case in Italy where 6 scientists were jailed. What he says were for failing to clearly communicate risks to the public about living in an earthquake zone. And that is true. There were 6 scientists that were jailed. But that's beside the point. The thing that was... The thing that really struck me when I saw this story and kind of connected it back to the NGT thing from last week was the concept of being able to read between the lines. Now, we look at what Torcello and deGrasse Tyson were trying to say, and you know, it's easy for people to laugh it off as, oh, those wacky liberals. I mean, like kind of clowns getting out of a clown car. These ideas will never pass. But then you have to be able to understand it and read between the lines of these stories and understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Well, I've got a couple of thoughts on it right off the bat. The first thought, and I'll let you delve a little deeper here on after the first thought. The first thought I have is it's the new technique of the liberals to shut down the debate.
Right.
I could win any debate and any conversation if I co-opted both sides of the debate.
Absolutely, and that's
If I co-opt the exculpatory evidence, if I've got both sides of the evidence, I cannot lose.
Mhm.
And I find that the Democrats liberals have started this with the climate change debate, but they've moved it on to other. They've subtly moved it on to other parts of their agenda.
Exactly. It's not about the thing that struck me was it's not about the desire to actually imprison people for denying climate change or deny the right to vote for people who believe in a young Earth. That's not the overall goal of them saying these things. What the overall goal is conditioning.
Well, the second thought I would have is during the terrorist attacks of 2011, we had a lot of dots out there. We had a lot of information, but the dots weren't connected. And I think you was advocating somehow what's these dots leading to? What's these dots trying to connect?
Right. But what I was trying to say is that the whole idea is it's kind of like a trial balloon that's being pushed out. The idea that something that is not acceptable to the government, language that is not acceptable to the government, can be limited and can be criminalized. So people who want to go out and argue climate change points, argue that, maybe it's not carbon, which has been higher, at higher levels thousands of years ago, which is on record. Carbon levels are relatively low. Maybe it's not carbon that's causing global climate change. Maybe it's this big ball of fire that's in the sky. Maybe it's activity of that. But the whole idea is trying to get us conditioned to say that certain ideas are not acceptable. Certain ideas can be criminalized. And where this is eventually going to lead to, and this isn't going to be in the immediate future, but it's in the very near future, in my opinion, this is leading towards the criminalization of religion that's not acceptable to them. This will lead, these are the trial balloons that are being floated, which are going to be used to acclimate the public to the idea of saying that, well, if you believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior, and you don't believe in this new God on the planet, whatever comes down, whatever we say is God, well, you should be imprisoned.
Well,
or eventually you should be put to death.
Ultimately, what you're speaking about is total control.
Absolutely.
Control of our speech. It kind of feeds to some of the stories we've been doing the past couple of weeks. The particular story I think you may have brought up last week about wanting to extract the word bossy out of the lexicon, out of contemporary vernacular, out of the jargon. If you can police people's carbon footprint and you can police their speech, what is there left? That encompasses a pretty good portion of our lives. So if they can get control of those two things, they're running the show.
Well, yeah, that's what they want to do. They want to get control of your ideas, get control of your thoughts, get control of your health. It's a total control grid that is being put into place.
So you got healthcare, you got speech. Here's something that I can't remember how long ago it was in the news, but I heard a potential disturbing story. Let's say you're at work and you're in the break room, and a couple of guys is having a conversation across the room, and they're making some defamatory remarks against homosexuals, for instance. If you don't say something, they're wanting to make laws that could punish you for your lack of response, your lack of speech. So if you don't condemn that action or condemn what they're talking about, you're held liable.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's another road that it could go down to. Getting back to that, there was another story that same day on March 17th. The Air Force saying that Christians' religious speech was not a legally protected right. They were saying Christians in the U.S. military are being told that they must forfeit their First Amendment rights. Bible verses are being erased from cadets' personal dorm room whiteboards, and military lawyers claim that legal protections for religion only pertain to matters such as clothing and growing beards. So basically, it's okay if you're a Muslim, but do not extend to any religious expressions such as talking about one's faith or posting a Bible verse.
Well, I saw the same, this may be part of what we're talking about, but I saw the same thing was being played out in the George Zimmerman case.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the battle lines drawn. The Democrats could give a crap less about George Zimmerman. The people who were defending him could really give a crap less about George Zimmerman. He was the pawn in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The battle lines, in my mind, had been drawn on stand your ground and right to carry laws. They weren't fighting over Zimmerman.
Right.
They were using Zimmerman as an excuse to battle that law in the court of public opinion.
And demonize the Second Amendment.
Demonize the Second
So
Amendment.
float the trial balloon that, 16-year-olds are dying, so we shouldn't allow anybody to have any guns.
Yeah.
And that's what they were trying to float across there. I guess the other point that I wanted to hit is, as Christians, being able to ask for discernment and being able to learn how to kind of read between the lines of different news stories and connect the dots of those news stories to show the overall agenda of what is being constructed.
And discernment is a gift.
Right.
And discernment is a gift that we can pray for.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to advocate, actually, is, when you're going through the news, and you can't just, when you're going through the news, do pray for discernment. Pray that God opens your eyes to kind of show what's really going on.
One, we're taught to pray for our leaders. We're
Mm-hmm.
taught to pray for our president. We're taught to pray for, our congressional leaders. We want in this country, we want religious liberty. And I think that's the reason we're to pray for these leaders. But you shall know them by the fruits they bear also. And so the gift of discernment is very key in the religious walk. It's very key in the religious, so that we are able to, without judging somebody, as my grandpa used to say, you may know them by the fruits they bear. So you're allowed to be a fruit inspector.
Exactly.
If you've got an apple tree that you've planted out in your front yard, and it's bearing oranges, something's wrong. Every seed is after its kind.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is not producing what it's supposed to be producing, we are allowed to be suspect of that, to discern that,
right,
and to walk away from that or participate in it as our Christian experience calls us to do. But I think what you're talking about, ultimately, when they get down to connecting the dots, you're going to find that it's shut down Christian speech, shut down Christ, shut down His Word.
Exactly. And that's what it is leading to.
Through shutting down His spokespeople, ultimately you try to shut down God.
And people have to get out of the mindset that tyranny can never happen in America, because it can happen in America. And that is where it's leading to.
And we were coming on our first break, and this is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and we will return shortly.
Across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. there is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcastonelive.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcastonelive.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you neat old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
And this is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and our guest, David Kanyuk. Again, if you'd like to contact the show, be sure and call in with your comments or questions at toll-free 855-244-0077 and 244-0077 locally. When we left you, we was in the spirit and the concept of connecting dots. And so David had a couple more thoughts here and a couple more stories that would lend itself to this this idea.
Well, here's my, let me read off some headlines for you from what I printed out today. Let's see here. Okay. Los Angeles police, that's in capital letters, all cars are under criminal investigation as part of license plate reader surveillance. This next one, that's not it. Navy database tracks civilians' parking tickets and fender benders, raising fears of domestic spying. U.S. tech giants knew of NSA data collection, agency's top lawyer insists. So, and then Senate has votes to pass law shielding corporate journalists. So I guess the question is with those headlines that I read off, what is it that they're constructing? What are the dots that we can connect? Let's see here. From let's go to the L.A. one. Police in L.A. have attempted to justify an automatic license plate reader surveillance program by claiming that every single car in the city is part of a criminal investigation. Think about that for a second. Every single car in Los Angeles, they consider part of a criminal investigation.
Well, it all goes back to 9/11. where, potentially everybody's a criminal.
Yeah, that's the key point. It does all go back to 9/11, doesn't it?
Well, a couple of small things of small interest. I don't smoke, but for years there's been an effort to curtail the habits of people who do from doing it in a business. They've pushed all the cigarette smoking out to the out-of-doors. I know, for example, a particular NASCAR track in Las Vegas out in the middle of the desert, there's no smoking whatsoever on the premises. Now, I don't know how much trouble you can get into smoking in the desert, but this goes beyond just banning it in the workplace. They're wanting to now ban it in the home. Again, control. Again, connecting another dot.
Exactly.
So
and that goes back to conditioning as well. So they're conditioning you to be able to change your behavior, change your habits.
Condition you a little at a time, and the more they condition you, the more you will tolerate and not acquiesce and not be shocked.
That's right. Humans are so adaptable.
Well,
and it's the old analogy of how do you cook a frog? You don't throw him in a pot of boiling water; he'll jump out.
Right.
You got to put him in some lukewarm water and then just gradually turn the heat up.
Well, when I was a young man growing up, they used to refer to what they call, I don't know if it's part of your jargon or not, but they used to have something they called the sin tax. And it was taxes on things that, were vices, liquor tax, cigarette tax, gas tax, different things that, they tried to raise revenue. And it seems to be now that I've always thought, well, why not tax the guy that's chewing too much bubble gum and eating too much fatty foods and sweets?
Bloomberg wanted to do that as the mayor of New York.
Well, this is something I've been thinking about for years until Bloomberg put it in motion.
Right.
And hard to tell what Bill de Blasio, where he'll take that next. But again, it's just going back to controlling. It's like I told my brother from another mother, Ed Fallon, the other night on his program. If they can get control of your carbon footprint, they have control of everything.
Right. They can tell you what you can eat, how much you can eat.
Now, he tells me...
how much you can heat your home.
He tells me that he's a progressive populist. Okay, we know that a progressive is willing to be patient and get some... Progressives and liberals are going to the same place, okay? One's just willing to be a little bit more patient getting there. A populist is somebody who, as a society changes, they should evolve and change. Then he describes he has this wild streak of libertarianism in him. So I read him a survey that come out here this week that said that 61% of polled individuals favor the Keystone Pipeline to 27% oppose it. And of that 61% that favor it, 49% Democrat favor it, 32% oppose it. So being a populist, I would think that Ed would just jump all over this opportunity to side with the people.
But at the same token, you can't really always side with what the majority wants. That's mob rule.
Sure.
I mean, if the majority of people voted to jump off a building, would you side with them? When the majority of people decide that Christianity should be outlawed, are we going to side with them?
Exactly. So that goes back to me and moral absolutes and moral relativity. Obviously, I'm a Christian, and I believe there's absolutes in this world, and the absolute is the Word of God. Follow the Word of God, irregardless of what man and what society thinks or how society changes or evolves.
Right.
But it's a slow, steady progression of gaining control, getting control of every aspect of your life.
And I feel like it has been accelerated under the Obama years, and that gets back to the point that I've raised over the past several years or several weeks of just who Obama is, and my analogy that he's like the closing pitcher in a baseball game coming in to get the last 3 outs, and that's why you're seeing such an acceleration of total control programs being put into place.
Well, he has taken the executive orders to a new high. It's about 5 minutes before our next break, and you're leaving us at 6 o'clock. So I want to get you your vote for Hypocrite of the Week.
Okay, well, let me get to that in just a second. But I guess the final point that I wanted to hit on that, because that just came to me when we talked about Obama, I asked, what are these 3 headlines telling you that they're constructing? And it's getting back to the point of who Obama is, what he's here to do for. And this closing picture, he's not going to leave when the game is done. He's constructing a system where he will stay in power. Yeah. I really believe that he is going to stick around.
Well, Rush Limbaugh opined on his program a couple of weeks ago that when he leaves office, he won't go and build a library like normal presidents.
Right.
He's likely to stay in D.C. and ensure that his programs are followed through.
Well, he's going to stay right in Pennsylvania Avenue.
Right.
He's going to manufacture some crisis and suspend the election.
Unless he can get the amendment changed where he can be voted in 3 times.
And that's a possibility. I'm 80% certain, though, that that those elections will be suspended. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Hypocrite of the week. I didn't prepare too much for hypocrite or kudos of the week. The thought that came to me when I was trying to put something together is for hypocrite of the week was mainstream media as a whole, especially looking at CNN and how they try to discredit independent journalists, especially, like InfoWars, Alex Jones, people like that.
Right.
How they try to discredit those people as being nothing more than a bunch of conspiracy theorists.
Inquirer magazine journalism.
However, CNN this week is pushing the theory regarding the Malaysian's aircraft disappearance. They actually, for a little bit, were pushing the theory that, well, maybe it got sucked into a black hole. Seriously, on television, they were seriously discussing maybe it got sucked into a black hole. Could a mini black hole have sucked it in?
Extraterrestrial.
Right.
Yeah.
So the mainstream or the independent media, which does much better research than mainstream media is doing these days, they get laughed at. They get called a bunch of conspiracy theorists. But we have to respect the CNN journalists because they're on TV and they're wearing their makeup, and they obviously know what they're talking about. While they're trying to push the ridiculous theory that maybe the Malaysian aircraft got sucked into a black hole. And also that connects to another story that just came out over the past few days, revealing that White House correspondence reporters have to ship their questions to Jay Carney ahead of time for them to be pre-answered before they actually have press briefings. The whole thing, mainstream media is such a facade. It's such a hypocrisy, and you cannot really trust what you see in mainstream media anymore, whether it's ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox. If you're trusting MSNBC and watching this show, God bless you. But
one of the first things that I would do if I had any ability for power over the country is I would eliminate this White House spokesman position altogether. That is such a waste of time and waste of energy. These guys don't answer anything. They're taught not to answer
exactly.
anything.
Whenever I see Jay Carney or any White House spokesman, I think of the scene from Lord of the Rings where the mouth of Sauron came out to barter with the Fellowship. But so that's what I had for Hypocrite of the Week, the total discredited prostitute media.
Did you have one other story about rice or something you was wanting to talk about?
Oh, that was just something that I had printed out, and that tied back into...
Well, hit that because we got a few minutes here, and I wanted to have the dots out there for the audience to connect.
Okay, this was from the Scientific American. This is getting back to limiting language and conditioning the public. Golden rice opponents should be held accountable for health problems linked to vitamin A deficiency. So golden rice, this is genetically modified rice. By 2002, golden rice was technically ready to go. Animal testing had found no health risks. Syngenta, which had figured out how to insert the vitamin A producing gene from carrots into rice, had handed all financial interests over to a nonprofit organization, so there would be no resistance to the life-saving technology from GMO opponents who resist genetic modification because big biotech companies profit from it. Except for the regulatory approval process, golden rice was ready to start saving millions of lives and preventing tens of millions of cases of blindness in people around the world who suffer from vitamin A deficiency. It's still not in use anywhere, however, because of the opposition to the genetically modified technology. Now, two agricultural economists, one from the Technical University of Munich, the other from the University of California, Berkeley, have quantified the price of that opposition in human health, and the numbers are truly frightening. So the story goes on to saying that, gosh, if you oppose this, if you're opposing genetically modified food, then you should be held accountable for the lives that you're not saving.
Now, does Monsanto have anything to do with this? Because if it does, this will tweak Ed Fallon's attention.
Yeah,
they have to fax that to him.
I will hand that to you. You fax away to Mr. Fallon. I like Ed. I actually wrote him in for governor back in like 2006 because there was nobody better running. I think it was Doug Gross versus, golly, who was the Democrat back running at the time? Vilsack. Vilsack was running at the time. So that was a no-win situation right there.
Well,
But
something a little off topic. We don't have a whole lot of time here, but Ed's opponent in that was one of his opponents in his races was Leonard Boswell. Understand that Leonard has garnered a cush position
right.
under Terry Branstad's administration.
Really?
I wonder what that's all. Wonder what that's all about.
I had not heard about that.
Something I believe in the DOT.
Huh. Well, folks, that's it for me for this week. Frank, I'm looking forward to hearing what dots you connect in the next half hour.
Okay, and this is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and the defector, David Canute. No,